Good morning and welcome to the STAR RESOURCES PLC investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company can review all questions submitted today and will publish those responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll. And I'd now like to hand you over to Alex Walker, CEO. Good morning, sir.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for joining us again today. My intention today is to have a fairly short presentation, largely similar to the previous ones, and just update the market on the JORC resource and then get straight into question time. There's obviously a lot going on with the company and everyone's leading very busy lives as well. So we're very, very pleased to be providing this update and once again, really appreciate your time for joining us today. Right, starting from the top again, STAR is very much going through the process of unlocking Kazakhstan's copper potential. A quick recap on the structure, just under 220 million shares on issue. The two biggest shareholders are myself and a supportive family office out of Australia called the Flannery family, and I've participated in every capital raise to date. We've been principally focused on copper, as most of you will be aware, for the last, well, certainly more than the last 12 months, about the last 18 months, in fact. And that's really starting to pay dividends, so to speak, for us in terms of our strategy at the moment. For those of you who have been tracking the copper market, we're now comfortably above $10,000 a tonne. And in my view, it shows no sign of slowing down. So we have a new JORC inferred resource, 20.3 million tonnes in our VMS deposit. We have a copper porphyry exploration project with through the BHP Explore program, and we have a sediment hosted copper exploration target. Both the porphyry and the sediment hosted offer the opportunity for what we consider to be tier one copper projects, and that is the capacity for a long mine life and to produce more than 200,000 tonnes per year of copper production. Just a little bit more about the copper market. Again, our thesis that we've been sort of banging the drum about for quite some time is that there's a massive supply deficit, and every little bit of news that seems to come out every day seems to reinforce that deficit. Initially, we had supply disruptions from, even before the supply disruptions, we had a predicted deficit from most of the major banks out to that was anticipated in 2027. Now, even that's 3 years away, but it's still quite significant because you cannot replace these tons easily. It takes many, many years to find big copper deposits and to permit them and put them into production. So even seeing that looming supply deficit 3 years or 4 years away was still a big incentive for the copper price to start moving. Then we had some very big supply disruptions. We had Cobre Panama from First Quantum coming offline with a repatriation process. We've had some supply disruptions in Peru and Chile with Codelco not meeting their production targets. There's a potential for more of those this year. In parts of Central Africa and Zambia, we've had droughts and most of their power comes from hydropower. And so we're expecting, although I don't think it's formally hit the headlines, but we're expecting to see potentially more supply disruptions from there. And of course, the real indicators being Chinese smelters essentially looking to shut. And it's no it's no mean feat to make the decision to shut a smelter. It's a very, very expensive and long process to both shut one down and restart it. And so typically they'll even trade at a loss for a reasonably long period of time. So the fact that they're looking to shut some of these smelters is a real indication of the lack of copper supply. So we're very, very bullish on the price of copper, and certainly potential concentrate producers like STAR have a real opportunity in this current market to supply into these desperate smelters. Okay. Just a quick reminder of where we are. Kazakhstan is a fantastic jurisdiction to be operating. It changed its mineral law in 2018, and since that to resemble that of Western Australia's. And since then, companies like STAR have come in, a couple of other junior companies, and now we're really starting to see some of the other majors coming in for copper exploration. So Rio Tinto was here before that process, but significantly increased their land package after 2018. And we've had Barrick come in first Quantum, Fortescue at the same time as eStar, and now touch wood, BHP with certainly through the BHP Explore program. Very low operating costs due to power, low power costs, low diesel costs, and fairly low labour costs. And it's already a massive contributor to the world's critical mineral supply in copper and uranium and chrome and in a number of other materials. So it's a very well understood mining jurisdiction, which means it's got the political will to grow its mining capacity. And it also has a relatively good social understanding of mining, which you could argue is not the case in a lot of other places, many places in Europe, for example. So those are the sorts of things that are a huge benefit to operating in Kazakhstan. And of course, has the opportunity for some tier one deposits, which is the last point, and it's ultimately the reason why we're here. A very, very underexplored jurisdiction. So the first of our copper strategies is our VMS exploration. Again, most of you might be aware. We had 2 large tenements when we listed the company in January of 2022. And from there, we acquired additional data. We built better relationships with the local community, which allowed us to do things like applying for areas that you need special consideration to apply for. So what's called a social obligations agreement. So we have that, and we're able to pick up several other licenses, one of which contained what is today the Vakuba deposit. It's a tremendously underexplored but infrastructure-rich region. Mining in the east region of Kazakhstan has been going on for hundreds of years. And essentially, from a geological perspective, you have mine where there's outcrop, and then nothing where there's cover, and then more mines where there's outcrop. And so initially our concept was, well, that's typically not the case in these belts. So the cover is hiding additional deposits. So that's what we've set out to find. And in fact, Vakuba is the first of what I hope to be many discoveries. A group called Kaz Minerals and Glencore through a subsidiary, a 70% owned subsidiary called Kazink, are the 2 major players in the region. Kaz Minerals have the Artemyevsky mine and the Ertishki mine that you can see in that map, and the Nikolovskoy concentrator. The Nikolovskoy mine that's labelled there is now closed and is a tailings facility. Their concentrator has 800,000 tonnes of spare capacity today, and their tailings capacity has more than 600 years their tailings facility has more than 600 years of capacity. You've also got the Belozovka concentrator to the south, which is towards the international airport of Usk-Magnitogorsk and our regional hub, as well as having a smelter in that region owned by Kazink. So you could not want for more infrastructure that you need to build a mine: roads, water, power, rail, and infrastructure to cheaply process ore is about 1.4 million tonnes of excess capacity today. So it really does provide an opportunity for any deposit ultimately to be put into production quickly and cheaply, and arguably better than just about anywhere else in the world that's not brownfields extension from an existing operating mine. Oops. So the new announcement for us last week was our JORC inferred resource. Again, for people that have been following eStar, they'll know that over a year ago, when we first announced our exploration target, which was in March 2023, we said this is no ordinary exploration target. And certainly what we meant by that was it was assessed from more than 42,000 metres of drilling. So it wasn't a spurious, several hundred metres apart, generalised trends. There could be millions of ounces of gold or whatever concept might be to come up with these targets. It was a very, very well defined and refined exploration target. And so what we were able to do over the course of 2023 was additional geological surveys over that license area. We found more than 70 of the drill collars that went into that exploration target, which was initially done as a desktop study. We did a detailed LiDAR survey, which gives you incredibly accurate topography over the region, which allows you to better assess things like your strip ratio and the altitude of collar locations. And of course, we did some drilling to confirm the mineralized zones and the trends, and that the lithology was the same as what we had logged historically. And all of that work is ultimately a very, very cheap and quick way for eStar to have come up with its maiden JORC inferred resource of 20.3 million tonnes at 1.16% copper, 1.54% zinc, and 0.27% lead. So that is incredibly exciting for us. It's over 250,000 tonnes, comfortably over 250,000 tonnes of contained copper equivalent. We believe that a reasonable percentage of that will be open pittable based on our own drilling and that of the historic drilling. We also have not yet done our own metallurgical test work, but the historical metallurgical test work shows incredibly high recoveries from copper from within this deposit, up to about 97% recovery from straight flotation. So we are, as it stands today, very, very excited by the potential of this deposit, by the value of it and what it might mean for eStar, and the simplicity of being comparative simplicity of being able to take it forward as a project through feasibility and hopefully into development, either by ourselves or with a partner. And on that note, we've publicly said that we're running a process for the Vancouver copper deposit. That process kicked off formally last month. It's ongoing as we speak. I'm pleased to say that us publicly announcing the JORC inferred resource had a couple of other parties reach out to us, which we have signed NDAs with one, and we are signing an NDA with another one, and we expect them to get into the data room and hopefully participate in that process as well. And so today we still feel there's a lot of value in this one individual project in a much bigger and still very, very exciting exploration portfolio. Again, we haven't focused specifically on targets. This is designed as quite a quick presentation, but again, we've held these licenses for more than 3 years. We've done a helicopter electromagnetic survey over the vast majority of the license area, which is a fantastic tool for targeting sulfides. We have done multiple geological traverses. We've done petrology on more than 80 samples across the entire region and within our deposit proper. We are waiting for some results from ICPMS, which is going to give us a technical understanding of the rock types and compare them to the rock types of the producing mines in the region. We've done several lines of IP over a couple of targets, and ultimately what that has resulted in is what we believe to have at least 3 drill-ready exploration targets this year. So these are targets which we've done everything in that you can reasonably do to de-risk something prior to drilling and to increase the quality of that target. So some of these are really looking fantastic. They're an EM target, they're an IP anomaly, and they're a few hundred meters from historical drilling, which showed mineralization in the core. So we know that particular area is mineralized, and it's showing that we have the right alteration at rocks on surface. So there's a little bit more field work we need to do to advance those, but I'm expecting to have at least 3 very, very high impact drill campaigns throughout the course of the remainder of 2024 on the VMS region. We were lucky enough to be the recipients of the BHP Explore program, which is actually a fantastic program. I'm in the middle of it as we speak. Obviously, it kicked off in January and finishes in June this year. It's a grant of $500,000 US, but it's also being described as a mini MBA for explorers. So we get access to unbelievable expertise from the BHP team, both from a technical expertise capacity, helping supplement our work, but also from a managerial capacity, mentoring, leadership, various work processes and so on, which is really increasing the efficiency and the operating capacity of eStar and putting us in a position where we can scale really, really well. So this program has been fantastic for us for all of those reasons. we've pegged 2 licenses within the area of interest that makes up part of this program. And that's the Ailgas and the Snowy license. And we are just in the process of signing a contract for the soils to begin on that. And I'm expecting them to mobilise next week. So soils will be the first part of the field work for the targeting of those 2 licenses. But there's ongoing macro work that's being done from a belt scale perspective to pick up what we hope to be a significant number of other targets that we can progress with porphyry exploration. And for those of you that aren't aware, porphyry's projects supply about 80% of the world's copper today. So they are a fantastic mineralization style for big tier 1 deposits. As I mentioned before, that more than 5 million tonnes of contained copper, more than 200,000 tonnes of copper production per year target, which groups like BHP really require to move the needle and have it be investable. So we're really looking forward to continuing on with that program and providing updates to the market as we have more information. Our sedimentary hosted copper concept is fairly new for us as well. Really driven out of our new technical director, Chris Van Wyk, which I still pronounce his name wrong, which he can tell me off for. And his past expertise amongst many others, which included a few years at heading up porphyry exploration programs for some major companies, was the head of SED-hosted copper exploration for First Quantum, who are arguably some of the best SED-hosted copper explorers in the world with their work in Africa. And so that's been a real win for us, him bringing GE Tech on board and that agreement with GE Tech, which means ultimately we don't have to pay for the initial targeting work. And the work they're doing, I've seen, is absolutely outstanding. So I'm really looking forward to them being able to complete that work and us applying that to the field and hopefully pegging some SED-hosted copper exploration licenses. And so you're aware, the people already looking for SED-hosted copper specifically in Kazakhstan includes Rio Tinto, First Quantum, and the other Kazakh explorer that's part of the BHP Explore program. They have a SED-hosted copper exploration license. And so it's a highly sought after mineralized style as well. And we're really looking forward to adding some of those licenses to our portfolio. So there we are. About a month and a half ago, I said in a month's time we'll have a JORC resource, and we did. What I'm really trying to, or what I'd like to get across to investors is, we are a company that say we're going to do something, then we go and do it, and then we tell you that we did it, and we tell you what we're going to do next. And I think we've got a demonstrable track record of that now over the last couple of years. We have our first maiden resource in Vancouver in an infrastructure-rich region, which has a very high potential for low capex and quick to development projects, especially with Vancouver being our principal asset there at the moment. We are doing initial porphyry targeting with BHP Explore and initial sediment-hosted targeting. What I expect to have with field season starting imminently, literally tomorrow, the guys are getting in their cars and starting to head out for their first geological transects, is we will be announcing the results of the soils on Snowy and Ailgas and then what the next steps are for those assets, assuming they are heading towards drill-ready targets. We expect to be picking up additional porphyry and sediment-hosted exploration targets. And of course, some more immediate high-impact work being the drilling of the VMS targets and the additional work we continue to do on Vancouver, outside, of course, of the corporate work being the process that we're running on Vancouver and any updates we can provide on that in the next month or two. And within 12 months, as I say, really hoping that we will be on top of all of the fieldwork results. We will be demonstrating that we're the partner of choice to some pretty major players in Kazakhstan, and hopefully that will demonstrate to major investors and to yourselves and continue to do to the government of Kazakhstan that we are efficient effective explorers in Kazakhstan, and we can really get the job done. So having some major players on in some form of joint venture would be a really great way for us to demonstrate that, and I very much feel we're on track for that. There we are. Thank you very much for your time. I think our 3 takeaway messages, which is the same as it was last time and the time before, is Kazakhstan is an absolutely fantastic place to be. 2.65 million square kilometers of just wonderful exploration territory that's completely underexplored. Copper is a thematic that you need to be in still today, even with it above $10,000 a tonne. I feel it's being underappreciated from certainly a lot of copper companies that are miners or explorers in the space that have not started to have that knock-on value that should come from an increase in the commodity price. And of course, if the commodity price continues to increase. And the final point being STAR is the best way to get exposure to those 2 fantastic thematics. So that's it from me. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll pause for some more questions.
Alex, thank you very much for your presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just by using the Q&A tab situated on the top right-hand corner of your screen. Just while the company take a few moments to review those questions submitted today, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. Alex, as you can see, we've received a number of questions throughout today's presentation. Can I please ask you to read out the questions and give responses where appropriate to do so, and I'll pick up from you at the end.
Certainly, many thanks. And as before, I'll read out all of the questions and do my best to be open and transparent about answering them, as long as it's not wall crossing anyone untoward. So the first question is, what is the most prospective area in the entire license portfolio? Does it have a drill permit, and when is the plan to drill it? I guess ultimately that really depends on what you're searching for. It's very difficult to say what's the most prospective. If I take the VMS, for example, the EM survey that we did produced out of hundreds and hundreds of anomalies, produced about 48 targets. Our field work from those targets refined it down to around 25. And since then, we've been trying to move and rank them based on a review of historical data. So the 3 or 4 that we've got, it would be a little bit difficult for me to rank those, quite frankly. I like the look of all of them, but for different reasons. One that we've put out data on in the past is Talovskoy, for example, which has some fantastic, incredibly high-grade geochemical rock chip samples taken from surface and from gossans and from ore-grade samples. However, it ranks lower on some of the other targeting metrics that we have. So it's a bit difficult to say which one I like the most. I might have to defer that one to one of my technical directors. On the rest of the portfolio, well, sedimentary, we don't have specific targets yet, and porphyry we're still very much learning about. So I think the soils will tell us about Aegaz and Snowy. I know both of them look very, very good on the spectral imaging that we've been conducting over the last week or so. And the teams will be out this week doing more detailed spectral work and geological traverses to help review those targets prior to the soil starting. So yeah, sorry, we can't give that full detail yet. In answer to your question about permits, yes, we're going through that permitting process at the moment. So the only thing that you don't tend to have through the permitting process until you know exactly where you're going to drill is something called servitude, or which is basically land access, and it's something you sign with the landholder. Most of the time for us, it's the municipality, the akimat, as they say in Kazakhstan. But some of them are private landholders. So some of the areas we signed last year and we didn't drill, and so that permit still stands, and some of them we're going through the process of permitting. But to date, we haven't had any issues getting approval specifically for any areas that we've wanted to drill. So touch wood, that remains the same. How does the company plan to attract high quality investors? Well, I'll have a look at the polls. High quality investors is a question, isn't it? I mean, my view would be that if you're a shareholder of STAR, then that makes you a high quality investor. But look, I appreciate the question. The share register itself, as we've said, is principally myself, the two largest shareholders are myself and the Flannery family. There's no doubt that they should be considered incredibly sophisticated and incredibly high quality investors. They've got a very demonstrable track record of that. And now, albeit not on the share register, we believe that being one of 6 recipients from more than 500 applications in the BHP Explore program arguably makes us a recipient of some other high quality investors, in this case BHP. So we'll see how we can continue that process with them and potential other parties. I think on the register, there's a few varying interests in that, in getting institutional money, for example, onto the register. And a couple of those issues are market cap and liquidity. Now, both have increased quite dramatically over the last 3 to 4 weeks, which is fantastic. But I'd suggest we've got a long way to go before you can get some of the major institutions, the likes of, back in the day, it was BlackRock and so on, and still is. But they, as far as I'm aware, they still very much have sort of liquidity and size thresholds. The work we're doing should see us there. I would very much hope at some stage in hopefully the not too distant future. So watch this space. How many years do you expect it could take to exploit the open pit potential of the Kuba deposit? Is there a potential cash flow before the end of the decade? Yeah, I mean, certainly I would say before the end of the decade, absolutely. In fact, that's given me probably quite a lot more leeway than I would have given myself, to be honest. It's a tough one to ask, to answer, with any massive degree of specificity. I would say that if we are in control of the program and therefore can run at our own pace, then towards the end of this year, as I've said in the past, we'll be hopefully putting a scoping study or a pre-feasibility study onto this, so end of this year or early next year. And with that in place, then you can start going through the permitting process as you continue to do the work to de-risk, convert it to a bankable feasibility study or a DFS, depending on the level of work you need to do. If our partner is with a known mine builder, then they might choose to do less work than we might otherwise do on feasibility work, because they have very much a lot of experience in that field. So arguably, they could push something forward faster than we would if we're managing it ourselves. But I would say it would be more than fair for 12 months of feasibility work initially, and then 12 months of further feasibility work plus permitting before it's realistic that we'd break ground. So I'd be leaning more towards 2026 than 2030, which hopefully is reasonable based on what you've written there. Thanks, Peter. Considering global shifts towards electrification and a structural deficit in copper, how is eSTAR positioning itself to capitalize on these market dynamics? Well, I really hope that I've made that a major point within my presentation. If I'm to try and elaborate on that any more, it would really be about trade routes, which, to be fair, might be a little bit early for me to start discussing in any serious detail, considering we're not in production anytime soon. But we should note that Kazakhstan is absolutely fantastically located in terms of market access. It takes a third of the time to get goods from China to Europe if it's done through the One Belt One Road initiative, through the Middle Corridor, the vast majority of which is via Kazakhstan. So Kazakhstan continue to invest in its infrastructure. They're looking to do more work on the Caspian Sea to build out the port capacity there. And certainly we're seeing a lot of investment from groups like China, but also groups like the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which are building roads in Kazakhstan. They're gasifying some of the power plants here. And so, there's a heavy level of investment to increase that. So, we're looking for the copper. That's our principal job. We're looking for it in the right place, a place that we feel we can find it and find big deposits, but also the right place from a market access perspective. And certainly, I can't remember where Kazakhstan is today, but the vast majority of its copper is processed internally and then exported, and exported as well. There's 3 copper smelters in Kazakhstan. We would expect to be able to get access to all of that existing infrastructure. Okay, hopefully I answered that, Andrew, but please fire another one if I've missed the mark. I understand that copper is the primary focus, and for very good reason, but shouldn't some resources also be put into the rare earth elements part of the company portfolio? Thanks for the question, James. We've discussed this in detail at board level, and the very short answer is we have decided to focus to not focus on the rare earths principally, and we did put that in our last annual report. I liked the rare earths initially. It had all of the hallmarks of an IAC, which was essentially an ionic clay. And again, as some of you may well know, the advisory panel on this was probably one of the best geologists in the world on rare earth deposits. So we certainly felt that we had all of the right indicators and all of the right information. It was an old deposit, so from a geological perspective, the risk was very low, and our drilling reiterated that. So we drilled 1,000 meters and hit absolutely fantastic, very, very high grade for IAC results. And then the metallurgical test work that we did basically for us meant that it wasn't easy, not impossible, but not easy. The board has discussed it in detail, and we came to the conclusion that the market didn't give us a lot of credit for doing that deal. Our share price didn't really move up at all. We didn't get any credit for drilling fantastic drill results in the rare earths, and yet we lost a market cap when we put out less than perfect, let's say, metallurgical results. And so the risk reward for STAR as a company became too high. Basically, if we don't get credit for doing good work and we lose value for doing for what could be considered negative work, then that makes it a much harder project to continue to invest in. At the time, we'd spent less than $100,000 on that project, and we lost about $2 million in market valuation due to the investment in that project, which is not the right risk reward that we need to be presenting to shareholders. So today, it's very much, I wouldn't even consider it on the back burner. I'd say it's when we're not interested in progressing the rare earths at this stage. Albeit, I do feel like there is potential in that area. There is a smelter in the Rudnaltai. Do you see an environment where non-Chinese smelted copper will demand a premium in Western markets? Oh, that's a very good question. No, not really. I probably don't know enough about the smelting market to be really definitive on this front. But there's a lot of talk of bifurcation of various metal prices. Copper's not particularly high on that list. One of the big ones that people are talking about at the moment is the nickel market, for example, because Indonesian nickel is essentially shut down most of Australia's nickel production, including BHP and groups linked to Fortescue, because they're such a low-cost producer, but very arguably with lower environmental standards. I don't understand that to be the case for Chinese copper smelters. I believe that their standards are probably on par from a global scale. Some smelters are good, some are bad, and it largely depends on where they draw their power from and what sort of product that they're taking. And so it chops and changes. But no, I wouldn't be predicting, personally, I wouldn't be predicting a bifurcation of those prices. I'd probably need to defer to some people a bit more intelligent than I am on the global copper market to answer that in more detail. Do you have a ballpark MPV for the Vakuba JORC resource? Appreciate that there would be lots of assumptions as such. Yeah, there would be a lot of assumptions. Look, we have internal models, but I'm not really in a position to discuss it, quite honestly. The only number that was ever published, which was not our number, was AMC, which published as part of the JORC exploration target. And that was largely because I think they saw an opportunity, and the person that worked at AMC is very good like that. So he ran a bunch of nested pit shells completely off his own bat and and looked at the open pit potential, which was also a non-capex open pit. So that's the only number that's been published in the past on that. I wouldn't be willing to talk about it until we do our own internal feasibility work and actually go through the process of a scoping study or pre-feas independently. What I'll say is that if we didn't think it was worth a lot more money than our company, then we wouldn't be running a process to sell it. And B, we also wouldn't be continuing to invest in it. It does have a considerable amount of potential. And the resource we put out, don't forget, was done at $9,000 a ton for copper, and we're already at 10,200. So, if you're profitable at 9, then every dollar above 9 is on the bottom line. It doesn't go towards paying your OPEX or your CAPEX. So that's something to be considered. Sorry, I can't give you any more detail on that. Is there a deadline for the partnership or sale data room access opening time? Yes, there is. We're running a process. We're keeping that in-house, the exact deadlines at the moment. In certain times, in certain instances, if you really wanted to keep a party at the table, but they requested more time, for instance, then there might be a degree of flexibility on that. But ultimately, we started running a process because people were showing interest for a long period of time, had been in the data room for a while, and actually now was time to say, right, well, we've had an offer, so this is it. We need to make a decision. So we're going to try and as much as we can to keep to the time frame that we've dictated. I've said to the market that I expect it to take several months, hopefully culminating by June. And today I'm still holding to that. What did BMP get out of the tie-up? BHP, I presume, Paul. Is the assumption that they will be partner of choice for any project identified. The structure of the agreement is as such that we've identified an area of interest that makes up the agreement. And within that area of interest, and as part of the program, they have, in essence, a right of first refusal to simplify what it's called, a right of first refusal. So that's for being a participant in the program now and receiving the funds, of course, from BHP. What we hope is to be able to progress it further than that. So that will be a long conversation. They do quite a lot of due diligence on us before the program starts. They continue to do very, very intense due diligence throughout the course of the program. I guess they monitor our performance within the program as well, and not just from a geological concept, how well we progress the targeting and using the mineral systems approach to something that is of interest to BHP, but how well we perform in our managerial aspects and ensuring the company is up to BHP standards for leadership, for health and safety, and so on. And so, we've been working really hard at all those other metrics as well as progressing the geology to hopefully put us in a front seat on that. So the only real, in essence, in answer to your question, what do they get out of it? It's the data that we produce and the right of first refusal, to make it simple, the right of first refusal over anything that we do in that area. Can you give us a high-level percentage profit per tonne relative to the current spot price for low cost? Average cost and high cost miners, please. If you want, you can concentrate in Kazakhstan. Sorry, let me just read that again. Can you give us a high-level percentage profit per tonne? I can't. No, not for Vakuba. If you're talking about operating in Kazakhstan, I can give you some examples. Kaz Minerals have two porphyries, in particular, Boshakol and Aktagai. Both are running at around 0.3% copper, a little bit more and a little bit less, and there's penalties and there's some credits as well from both mines. But 0.3% copper could be deemed quite low from a global scale perspective, and yet those two mines are in the lowest quartile producers on the planet. So that is a real demonstration of how well a good operator can work in Kazakhstan, how low they can produce, how low cost they can produce a major copper mine. So I think that's the question. For the VMS stuff, yeah, it's a little bit hard to say at the moment, but I'd be hard pressed to think that we would be a high cost producer, and particularly from the potential that we actually hopefully won't be paying back much of a capex because we'll be using some existing infrastructure. How complex is the permitting process in Kazakhstan? Once you've a feasibility plan, how long do you have to wait for approval? Paul, that's a good question. It's been going through iterations, the approvals process, as has the subsoil law the last couple of years. I can't give you the full rundown on that, quite frankly, because I'm not super familiar with it. What I do have is we've spoken to a number of advisors to get an idea of how long it might take, and we think that 12 months is more than fair in terms of being what I've said to the stock market is we believe we can get it permitted after the feasibility work within roughly that period of time. I hope that everyone knows I tend to be conservative relatively on that front. So there's a potential it could go faster, but I think it's fair to say that would be maybe a reasonable period of time for permitting. Again, it depends on who's doing it. Is it eStar or is it another player with a lot of experience in that field? It also depends on what's being permitted. I'm assuming that we're not building a tailings facility or a processing facility in some instances. If we are building those, then I would expect the permitting to take a bit longer. How do you think the Vakuba farm out process will be do you think the Vakuba farm out process will be finalised by the end of June 2024? Yes, I hope so. I think it will be. I think the player will have been selected, and we will have announced who that is, and the initial agreements have been signed. There's a chance that there's additional paperwork. It's like signing a binding heads of agreement subject to final due diligence, for example. There might still be some final things that need ticking off by that stage, but I would hope that we've updated the market well and truly within that time. That's the end of the questions. So that was great, everyone. Thank you. We've kept it to 45 minutes, which was really good. Very insightful questions. And so if there's nothing else, I'll say thanks once again for your time. For the shareholders, thank you very much for sticking with us. We're really starting to demonstrate what I believe to be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity here. And I'm feeling incredibly confident that we'll be delivering more news to you in the not-too-distant future, coming months, from drilling new targets, joint ventures, and the like. It's a really, really exciting time to be an eStar shareholder. So thank you once again. Appreciate it.
Alex, thank you for updating investors today. Can I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, and I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of eStar Resources PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good morning to you all.